and starting this new one, and hopefully people will be able to migrate across to us. And we've got people coming in slowly, which is fantastic. So thank you so much.
Yes, we're recording.
I don't even know where to start now. I'm slightly discombobulated, as they say, which is funny when you're running a public speaking presentation. And I suppose, really, we were going on to keeping excited and engaged, but I suppose it's a wonderful moment to basically come out and say, you know, even though you may have tested the material, you may have tested your connections, you may have tested everything, and of course it was all working fine not long ago, when you actually come to the moment of, in this case, 8 o'clock, that it doesn't always go to fashion. And you have two options. You can walk away, or you can persist, rope a few other people in with some teamwork, and and get yourself back on it and get live. So for those of you joining us for the first time here on Blab, welcome. It is still in beta testing mode, which really does mean that things will go wrong and things will go right, and they'll keep refining this as we go forward. And we've seen that firsthand this evening, and some of us can get in and some of us can't. So it's been just fantastic. And yes, we've still got some things going down the side there, and I would like to officially welcome Anna as my co-host here this evening. Much better looking than my regular co-host, but that's not really a compliment, I don't think.
Thank you.
All things considered. So it's great to have you on board tonight, and I thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from and how you come to be here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Anna. I'm the head of happiness over at the Happy Hotline. The Happy Hotline is an online resource that brings you all kinds of beautiful and inspirational snippets from around the interwebs, as well as my own musings and adventures from my happiness journey. In addition to sharing my world and what inspires me on thehappyhotline.com, I'm also a life coach that specializes in working with people who are ready to take their good lives to a great phase. So majority of my clients are people that are looking to step out of the 9-to-5 drone and take that little bit of curiosity they've got, that maybe that hobby that they have, and turn it into something bigger and better, whether they're writers who want to enter a creative writing competition for the first time, or somebody who loves fashion and wants to start their own styling business. They're the type of people that I work with in my coaching business. And I spend a heck of a lot of time on social media, so you can find all sorts of stuff on my social media pages, and in particular addicted to this new profile, Blab. I'm loving Blab right now. It's a hell of a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about me. And Jan's just popped in saying, have fun, guys, gotta go. People are looking at me. So yeah, get out of here, buddy.
What happens when you're at a dinner with numerous people and constantly on your mobile checking up on your business partner and his Blab. So thanks for dropping by though, Jan. And next week it'll be Jan as well. I'm off overseas for the week. So it's great to be able to bounce around and have different people coming in and out of here. And for those of you who are joining us here for the first time about Blab, well, this is it. You can have up to 4 people on the screen here. So a little later on, we'll open up the seats below us, and we'd love you to come out and ask your questions live, so to speak. But having said that, you can jump onto the right-hand side of the screen and you can type questions in there, comments, etc. And on the opposite side, you can see that you can also tweet straight out about this. So it's a wonderful medium. We took on deciding we'd like to run webinars, but decided we really wanted the interactivity. And that's when Blab popped up. And as Anna mentioned earlier, for those of you that were here, she's running a weekly Blab on Thursday nights, 8:30 Eastern Australian time. And I was able to jump on and start to experiment and find out how this particular medium works. So if you've got questions about Blab, feel free to type them in the corner. We've got a few people here who are becoming Blab experts who can help you out. But I think we'll kick in to our Blab this evening, Anna, and we were moving on from where we were last week, where we spoke about how to read a room and how to gauge whether people, are falling asleep or whether they're awake and into what you're saying. We thought we'd talk about how to actually keep your audience excited and engaged. And when we sort of came up with this topic, I work with a lot of people in the public speaking sector who feel that they need to have their crowd bouncing off the ceiling for the whole presentation, whether it's 10 minutes, 90 minutes, a day, a week, that they feel it has to be energy, 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 energy. And once you go longer than 10 minutes, excuse me, really, really hard for you to keep that energy up, let alone for your audience to keep that energy up. So we thought we'd talk tonight about a few ways that you can keep them excited and engaged without necessarily having to pump up the volume, get the music going and dance around on stage and excite yourself. I'd love, Ian, if you're still with us, feel free to jump out, mate, too. Thank you so much for getting it started. I'm happy to make it a three-way conversation at the moment. But, Anna, I'd like to throw it across to you to start with, to be honest, and some ways that you've used to, sorry, Ian came on and you moved. Some ways that you've utilised in your public speaking to keep your audience engaged.
Yeah, great. And I loved what you said there, Fraser, about not having to have the crowd on that bubbling high the whole time that you're on stage or you're on camera, wherever you are. I was actually watching a presenter today who I really admire, and she was saying that they'd just come back from a break, and before the break they'd been in this really high energy and bounce, and then they went to lunch. So there's all that, you're meeting new people and networking, so you've got a lot of energy going on in that space as well. And when they came back, she said, okay, I want us to bring it right down now. And she took the audience through a guided meditation, and she just really brought the energy right back down into the room. And the thing that I really loved about that is it created space. Yeah. It gave you the emotional space and the mental capacity to actually take in new information. I think when you're running on that high, especially in a room where you're learning new things, where your brain is already running a little bit on overdrive anyway, and you're sort of struggling to take it on, you're furiously typing notes and you're trying to connect with people and ensure you look good, and you've got all this stuff going on, that if you're running it at that high, the burnout level happens a lot sooner. And it's kind of like, you've eaten a giant bag of Skittles. So you're way up here, but the crash is really hard. And so bringing that energy down, slowing everything down, just gives people the room to marinate almost in what they've already received, and just bring that sugar level, I'll keep using that metaphor of the Skittles, to bring that all back down again, to just start to realize some things that they maybe hadn't noticed before, whether that's something that's going on with them physically. Sometimes when we're in a new space, if we are on that high, we don't notice when we're getting excited about an idea, or we're just excited about the information or the energy that somebody else is projecting onto us. So the question that you asked me, Fraser, was what are some of the techniques that I use? And I think I've probably shown you one of those techniques as I've answered that question in a really roundabout way. But tone of voice, that tone and the speed that I use in my voice is something that I use. When I'm talking about that high energy, bringing my voice up, picking up the speed of the pace, even the hand movements pick up a little bit more, bringing that energy up through what I'm doing. And then when I want the room to calm down, slowing my voice down, bringing that tone a little bit softer. And I think the audience follows that lead quite closely. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for your guidance on that. So in a very long-winded and roundabout way, Fraser, that is something that I do.
I love it, Anna. It's fantastic. I would like to ask, do you use that specific speeding up, slowing down tonality around specific messages? So are you looking for a match, or are you looking to whatever the opposite of match is, which has escaped my brain right now?
Yeah, well, last week on the Happy Hour show, we were talking about anxiety, and it was probably the perfect space to use that varying speed in my language and articulation and tonality, because when I was talking about the space when you're in that high anxiety zone, using the voice that, you know, it's almost that voice that's reflected in our head.
Yeah.
You know, that, I don't know if I can do this. This is really scary and I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to stop. Using that tone, it's like people immediately can step into and they're like, oh, I know that voice. I know that, you know, and whether you're using it with anxiety or excitement, because the two can be, you know, crossed over from time to time. Sometimes we misconstrue the two as being one and the same. And then bringing that voice down and it's almost that, I love when you bring the voice down a little bit and there's that softness. It's almost like people have to lean in.
Yeah, it works so well, doesn't it? Yeah. I used to run school camps before I do what I do now. And most of the students that I worked with, as in the teaching students, would just yell louder and louder and louder and louder to get the attention of the kids. And I would do quite the opposite, and I would just start to lower. And exactly as you said, and in a camp situation, it would be physical. Kids would physically have to come towards you because they couldn't hear what you were saying. But suddenly they're like, what's going on? What's going on over there? It was really interesting to use the opposite way. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked a summer at a summer camp, and that's actually where I met my husband. Funnily enough, we are a summer romance.
You met your husband at camp,
yeah. Yes. We were both counsellors. Yes. But I used to see the same thing all the time. It'd be like, everybody be quiet, and people, that screaming would just get responded with, we're all going wild. And like very quick, like, you know, and I was one of those people as well. You know, you're trying to corral, it's like herding cats, like 150 hyperactive school kids, like, but we used to do this really simple thing. It would just, if you can hear my voice, clap once. Yeah. You can hear my voice, clap twice. And all of a sudden you've got these claps going on and people are like, what's going on? And it's that, you know, that almost that little bit of sneaky kind of stuff that engages one person, that you get that little bit of Chinese whispers or ripple effect, whatever you want to call it, that starts to draw people in, that, oh, what's she got? I want a piece of that.
Yeah, I love that you come back to that word engaged, which is what it's all about, specifically public speaking, of course.
See what I did there?
It was a nice loop, certainly. And I'd love to bring you in as well, mate, on where the conversation is at, and you know, and bring youth forward to it. Any sort of little tricks or tips you've got about keeping, you know, we pop the word excited in there, but really it's about how do we keep them engaged and wanting to be part of our day.
Definitely. It's about them being engaged, but also taking in what you need them to take in to achieve your overall outcome. If you look at a presentation, and you know, our audience will do things that are very short right through to very long. And let's just say we talk about the 7-day events or even the 1-day events. They're a very long time to keep an audience on point, to get everything they can get out of it. So I would imagine that most of our audience need to learn a couple of things. And that is that the normal attention span of a listener in a presentation is about 7 to 10 minutes. Yeah. That's how long they can last in one mode of thought. So when we're looking at our presentations that are longer than that, we need to think, how do we give the audience the break? How do we let them marinate, if we go by the previous analogy? But how do we get them to where we need them when we're selling a product? How do we get them to where we need them when we want them to look inside themselves? And that's all that pace, power, pitch and pause that we're just speaking about around using your voice, but also managing their energy level. Considering that if it's 7 to 10 minutes for them to lose interest, we need to plot in our presentation where do we want them to be at various stages through the presentation to absorb what we want them to absorb. So we need to plan it out through the timeline and go, right, here we want them to be retrospective. We want them to be thinking about where they've come from. We want that pensive state where they're going, I understand something about this situation. And then when we're trying to provide solutions, we want to hype them up. We want them to learn something and go, wow, this is exciting, this is interesting, this is something that I can build on. And then drop the magical key that opens the new kingdom. And it's about managing those energy levels throughout the presentation that will keep them excited and engaged, because you can't do it up here 100% of the time. Or if you do, they don't know when to be acting. They don't know. We need to manage that for them. So we need to think, go back to the 7 to 10 minute example, think about different activities every 10 to 15 minutes. Shift them from one thing where you might be teaching to telling a story, to asking them a question, to having an interactive activity where they're having a conversation with their mate. That is where you'll get them to keep with you for as long as you need, but give them the downtime. You've got to have spots in your presentation which are quite low and spots when they're really heightened to maximize their senses, because it's a bit like flight and fight. If you want them to actually fight, they've got to have the downtime to be ready to fight. Yeah. And it's that balance that we're searching for as speakers, to tell stories, to make change, to have them think in a different way. And if it's all monotone, if it's all boring, or if it's all very exciting, they don't know which chunks to catch. I've actually done a video once where I was throwing balls. Which balls do you catch? It's the presenter's need to show the audience, this is a ball you need to catch. It's something really useful. Grab that nugget and run with it. And we need to provide those highs and lows and make that obvious.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, that was full of a whole heap of gold advice for people, both new and I suppose seasoned presentations. There's two things in there that you said that I find a lot of people miss out. That we are responsible for managing the audience energy level. Now, we're not responsible necessarily for various things within an audience, but yeah, you need to manage the way they're feeling. And as a presenter, that is your role, to manage, where do you want the audience? Are we up, we down? We all know, people have heard, they've just come back from lunch. They're going to be full. They're going to be blurt. They're just going to want a nap. Good luck with that spot. Well, you need to work with that, certainly, but you are then going to go, okay, well, how do I manage that, and how do I get them to where I need to get them? And, a lot of people fall back to the standard, let's put on a loud AC/DC song and, and rock the energy into them. A bit like Anna's Skittles, though, it peaks and drops really quickly. And to use a lot of the modern vernacular, we're looking for a slow-release GI or whatever it's called, rather than the sugar punch. The second thing you mentioned there, Ian, that I'd love to bring to a point is something else that I find people don't gather, that we spoke about this last week. The time in front of your audience is only 50% of your presentation. What you do for your preparation is the other 50%. And without that 50%, before you get on stage, even an awesome speaker isn't going to have an awesome presentation, because as you were saying there, you've actually planned out all your little 10-minute gaps. And so, am I driving up? Am I driving down? Am I flattening, etc.? Rather than what a lot of people seem to think is that naturally good speakers are making everything up as they go along, and they're just good at it. And I'm not that person, and I can't talk, and I will just never speak to anyone again. And it's so not true. There is so much preparation and knowledge and acceptance that goes into beforehand. Certainly, there's a degree of flexibility and things that happen on stage, but there's that preparation that I don't think people realise really helps you manage all those levels as you go through. Ian?
Absolutely. The key for me is really knowing your content, and I don't mean learning the presentation. I know people who have sat down for hours. This is for me. Other people may want to learn it, but that's not me. I learn the knowledge space. I don't learn every word I'm going to speak. My job is to get an audience from there to there, however it takes. And on Blab, I get known as a bit of an Aussie, and I use the sheep analogy. While I'm moving the sheep from there to there, sheep go off in different directions. And my job is to round them up and bring them back in so they get to the same endpoint. And all my effort during a presentation is about how do I get them from there to there. And the content, it will just flow. It'll appear as though I know a lot, but really my energy, my focus is how do I shift the room from there to there. And that's where I spend all my time and my energy. The content just flows, you're serving the room, and I don't mind if I give them more content than I planned. It's about getting them to the place that they need to be to make the decision to move forward, whether it's to take their own action, whether to buy a product, or whether to just say, I want to hear more.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, my job is to move them from there to there. Everything else I should have learned before I got in the room.
So if I'm hearing you right, Ian, what you're almost saying is that there's, you know, an external structure or a framework or a trellis, if I'm trying to come up with the analogy, that sort of means, yeah, we're here and we're going here, and here's sort of a bit of a structure I can use, but I'm going to, like an ivy, to go with the trellis, I'm going to wind my way through that trellis however I need to get them to the end point.
Mindful that I have a plan. For example, if I'm doing true storytelling, let's just say I'm trying to use the hero's journey as a model for development. I know the pattern of the hero's journey. I know the steps I'm going to go through, and the time is the only variable. Is the audience ready to learn of the insight that's going to be shared? Is the audience ready to feel that really low point? Oh, that person's not feeling it yet. How do I make it even more potent so they feel that pain to then go, oh, here's the insight that's really going to help me and release that tension. That's where I'm focused. I've got the plan, I've got the structure. The structure I'm hanging my story off, but the people is who I'm moving, and that's just how I tackle it.
Yeah, and that's a great example of sort of having that some sort of structure, an exoskeleton, shall we say, but then we can add meat as we go, and we might add, you know, more meat in certain parts of the skeleton and less in others, because, as we spoke about in the Blab last week, we're reading the room and what they need at any moment. So we haven't gone in with the first 10 minutes, I'm going to speak about this, and the next 10 minutes it's going to be that, because we might find the audience haven't quite come with us, or they have come with us. So it's a you know, an amazing well, it is a skill to be able to do that, and that's where the great facilitators definitely start to, you know, when you see those guys work a room and those girls work a room, that you really notice that they there's a lot that they're reading rather than just coming out and going, here's my 90 minutes. The other thing you said in there, Ian, is it's about knowing your content, and I'm amazed, and no doubt the three of us can talk different stories here about how many people go, well, I can't talk about plumbing for 20 minutes. And I'm like, how long have you been a plumber? Oh, 35 years. You can't talk to me. Now, if I was at a barbecue and asked you about plumbing, you would chew my ear off for an hour and a half while I tried to go and get a drink. But because I've got to stand in front of a group, 35 years I've been a plumber, but I couldn't possibly speak for 20 minutes. And they get started, and suddenly they've got, you know, 35 years worth of stuff to share. So it is about talking about things that you have a knowledge about, that you are passionate and experienced about, makes life a lot easier. But having said that, you don't need to know everything about a subject to talk about it. Anna, I'd love if you've got some things you'd like to sort of share and explore around that particular thought process.
Yeah, and the idea of connecting what Ian was saying and what you're saying there, of it's all about taking people on a journey, and what is the outcome that you're wanting to get them on, and the journey that you're taking them on, the information that you're sharing with people to get them to where you need them to be, doesn't necessarily have to all be on plumbing. Yeah, it can be, okay, what I need you to understand is that when you're a plumber, well, this is such a bad analogy for me to use because I know nothing about plumbing, but
sorry about that. Set you up for a fall.
Oh, hang on. I could do a joke in here maybe. When you're a plumber, you need to understand that shit happens. See what I did there? You know, and then, you know, by using that, sort of bringing a little bit of humor in there, but also going down the path of sharing a story that you do know really well about a time in your life where shit happened, because it does. You know, the other week I was on my way to work, and I got halfway there. I'd spent an hour and a half blow drying my hair. I had my brand new hot pink lipstick on, and I was looking smoking. And I'm halfway to work, and all of a sudden, the skies open up, and it starts to pour with rain. And I look at my bag, and I don't have an umbrella. And then all of a sudden, I step in dog shit. And then I get to the station, and I miss the train. And one thing after another, it happens. I know this story inside out. It's happened a million times. And what it represents to, you know, it's telling our audience that stuff happens, they can take something away from it. You know, at the end of the day, I got on the train and all was all right, and it was, you know, it was a great day, and I realized that running late actually meant that I got to turn up to work with curly hair, because the rain turned my hair curly, and I turned way more heads. That, it doesn't have to, the information you're sharing doesn't always have to be about the topic that you're discussing. That sometimes to keep people engaged and excited, see what I did there, it's about having information that draws them in to you, that makes them go, she's human, she's interesting. Oh, I wonder where she buys her lipstick from. I didn't know that her hair was naturally curly. It starts for them to kind of build up a story around their connection to you, but also build their own story. Because I know that when you tell, especially around public transport, you tell a story like that, every single person goes, oh, that happened to me one time. I remember when that happened. And, oh, you know what? It wasn't so bad. Yeah. And they immediately connect to their own joy or disappointment or insert emotion here through that information. So you don't always have to know the content inside out. You just have to be able to connect them to the journey that's going to get them to that end outcome, as Anne was saying. Yeah,
that's a great thing. We talk about public speaking, and we often imagine that situation where someone's at the front of the room and there's an audience out there. But public speaking is often a conversation like the three of us are having.
Yeah.
With 8 people listening on the side, 5 or 6 people listening on the side. And it's interesting. You know when you're engaging, when you tell the toilet story and somebody follows up with their own.
Yeah.
That's you are an engaged presenter. When you tell your story, no, that happened to me. I had that same scenario with the dog on the shoe. You know what? I cried off in the grave. Anything like you do that, you've got them. You've done the fishing and succeeded.
Sci-fi Funk's just popped down there that engagement can be classified as edutainment. And, I think that's so true that on so many levels, a lot of audiences, when they're learning, and by learning, I mean hearing new content that is interesting to them. I'm not thinking school learning necessarily, that it is entertainment. And when that's balanced in with learning and growth. And I was about to say, I don't suppose anyone walks into a room voluntarily to hear a speaker not looking for something new. The thought only just occurred to me, so I'm trying to think if there's a fact against that. But you're looking for new information. Otherwise, if you're looking for something that you've already had, I suppose you might not be in the room. So there's definitely that role of the presenter to provide this education in entertaining and a fun and a way that helps the people take on that entertainment. And speaking of stories, we've all got school stories about falling asleep on a desk and all that sort of stuff. And this is not getting into an anti-school rant by any stretch. I'm an ex-teacher.
Oh, did you go to school?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Well, you Kiwis, but let's not go there. So,
hey, I am like months away from becoming an Australian, or have but I need to learn how to say the word first.
I'm sure we'll get a vote on that. Yeah, you'll be fine. If you win the World Cup, you're not coming anywhere near us, but that won't happen, so you'll be all right. Sorry, for anyone in the US, there's a World Cup of rugby going on, which you guys play, but I don't think many people know about. So we'll keep moving because I think I might be outnumbered here anyway. We'll keep going on, but. It's interesting that we talk about, when we're talking about exciting and engagement too, that we seem to keep coming back to this flexibility, both of what we're presenting and where we're going. And we've got an English guy, have we? Yeah, that's we'll keep going about the rugby while we're there, and that we talk about being flexible and not going in with a set script and reading it and all that sort of stuff. That the minute you raise your eyes from a podium, and we've all seen the people, looking and reading their things on a podium, and that's the view that you get of the person, because this is what, and occasionally you'll get that as they're reading there, just to make sure that they're in the middle of the right sentence. But the minute you cannot do that and have notes that allow you to speak to and read the room because your eyes are up, straight away you're creating an engagement with an audience rather than looking at the top of someone's head. So having that flexibility, which I know scares so many people in that they're not sure, what am I going to talk about when I'm there if I don't have it all, written down, that being able to trust yourself and being able to trust your subconscious that you've done the work, you have the knowledge, you understand the topics, you are now able to respond to a room rather than respond to you. And I know Ian brought it up last week that it's not about your talk, it's their talk. And how are you going to get them involved and give them the most value? And Ian, I'd love if you felt like sort of taking that particular thought and expanding a little bit more on where you were going with that last week.
Well, definitely. When you're presenting, you aren't really just presenting your view. You're actually having an audience go on that journey. And that, I'm almost repeating myself, that's what you're out to achieve. And I'm just going to go back a step to the previous conversation and leverage that a little bit, where the stories are providing context. They provide meaning to carry a real hardline message. And often when an attendee comes to a class, the reality is a lot of the content is already available. It's already out there. They can Google it and learn stuff. But what they don't have is the context that helps them apply it. And that's our stories. That's our ability to let them apply it in their own world. So really we're creating a vision that allows the audience member, let's pick on one for a moment, allow that audience member to put themselves into a situation and see that story as a new vehicle to find a new end, even though it's probably the same message they've heard before. In business, you need to care about profit. There must be 100 million stories that talk about profit. Mm-hmm. And all you need to do is find the right story to help that person move from A to B. And to do that, it's about the audience's journey. It's not about your journey of getting through the hour and a half a day, a week. It's about how does that person get from A to B? And any vehicle that you can use to move them is a good vehicle. And each person might have a different vehicle, which is why we use visual language, auditory language, kinesthetic. The game goes on in a number of ways you can describe a circumstance and move people. But your job is to find the best way to move that group of people, knowing their demographics, psychographics, and how they're behaving on the day. So we all have our off days, we have our hot days, and we just need to take a pulse and go, this is where this room is at. Oh, Fred over there is a bit different. We'll try and move him across early if we can, and move him and them all to the end state. It's about their movement. And if we lose sight of that, we're not being speakers. We're actually standing and just talking at people. And that's not what people want to hear. They want to get into the story. They want to be moved. And they wouldn't have paid money to see us or paid money at the back of the room unless they're moved. And I put a quote up on Twitter the other day. It's around apologising. If you need to apologise for your presentation, don't give it. It's not about you and not being ready. The real purpose of presenting is to move a room. And if you can't work out how you're going to move a room, you're not quite ready yet. Now, how far you need to move them, I think, is the variable. Now, can you move them to think differently? Can you move them to sign into lists? Can you move them to buy a book? Can you move them to buy a program? They're different levels of skill, but also a different level of trust that you need to build through the process. I'd be looking at how do you move each individual, and that tells you it's about them, not about you. And that solves the confidence issue very, very quickly for me. Yeah,
I love the word that you used in there, Ian, which was context. And when we think about, and I'm going to go back to school again, but there are certain teachers, presenters, whatever, who just, what do you mean you don't understand? And they say it again in the same words, in the same language, just slightly louder. And for those of you who have travelled to countries that don't speak English, well, that's exactly how some people react. Instead of changing their tack, they just say the same thing in English even louder and suddenly think that the Vietnamese guy is going to understand. Well, it's not going to happen. You need to take what you're saying and create the context that makes sense to the audience member. And I like that we talk about, regardless of how big the audience is, you're really connecting with every single audience member on a one-to-one conversation, because as an audience, that's how you hear it. The people who are on this Blab are sitting there probably by themselves in an office, in a restaurant, thanks, Jan, or wherever else they're sitting. But it's even though there's four of us involved, the three of us and your good self out there. But yeah, you're really having that one-to-one conversation. So I love that you can bring that context to someone to really get your message across. And before I throw across to you, Anna, I've seen recently a business coach who's a wonderful presenter, presents on business all the time to rooms anywhere from 10 to 200, and he's wonderful and he knows his stuff and he's an awesome business coach. And recently he was asked to talk not about business but about some personal things. And as a wonderful presenter, that took him to a whole other level. He struggled a little bit to talk about things that were seriously personal to him in his journey, and struggled to keep it together on stage when he was presenting this, because it was a hugely emotional moment for him to be reliving basically this thing. And so you could have said that it was one of the least professional presentations he'd ever given. Having said that, it was the most engaging, and he got the most feedback he'd ever had at any of his presentations. And for him, and I like to use, it's when the penny drops, because as you said, we can hear things hundreds of times and suddenly we hear it slightly differently and go, hey, the penny dropped for him as well. That, you know what, if I can bring more of me, more of this into these presentations, including the business presentations, that's where I start to get real engagement from people rather than, shall we say, surface engagement. And I'd love to throw across to you at this point, Anna, to sort of expand on that as well.
Yeah, no, and it's I'm so pleased you've thrown to me, because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and that, and I'll sum it up in one word. It's bringing a level of vulnerability to the stage with you, no matter what that stage looks like. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that space. I recently have had a few experiences with upping my vulnerability level. The Happy Hotline is a space where, I do share my own adventures on this happiness journey. And so it's about me, it's about my life. But I've kind of played around with censoring that a little bit of, okay, what do people want to read? And getting, getting caught up in this idea that people want to see perfection. Yeah. And, well presented, and this, that sort of bit of a Stepford wife thing. And I posted 2 videos on my Facebook page recently, where, the first one, it was basically around the topic of who am I? And I went on, and I didn't, I had a bit of an idea of where I wanted to go with it, but I was like, I'm just going to see what comes up. I don't have to hit send if I don't want to. And as I went through this video, it was kind of like, well, who am I? All right, I'm a life coach. I'm a blogger. I'm a, Taylor Swift fan. I'm a lipstick wearer. Yeah, great. No, that's not who I am. That's what I do. That's what I like. Who am I? Okay, I'm someone who's incredibly confident, but extremely afraid. Oh. I'm someone and I started going through this contrast of all my personalities. I've only got one. The parts of my personality, United States of Tara, right here. All the parts of my personality that make me whole. And a lot of those parts are, it's the happy with the sadness. And at the end, it was like, well, this is who I am, and embracing all of my parts, being okay with that, makes me who I am, makes me me. And, I kind of went, oh, do I send it? Do I do it? I don't know. What are people going to say? And I just think, oh, just do it. Like, who cares? Put it out there. See what happens. That video got something like 1,500 views, more shares and more likes than anything I've done on my social media. And I truly believe it's because I was prepared to be vulnerable in that space. I was prepared to let people see all of me. And the comments and the feedback that I've got, it's people, a woman at work who was, traveling while I posted it, she came in, she said, oh my gosh, I watched your video. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I actually thought she was talking about one of the Blab videos, because that was like ages ago. I was like, I forgot about that. She's like, oh, I watched your video. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how brave you are. I wish I could be more like you. I wish I could do that. And I was like, huh? Because it was, it's kind of like, oh, wow. Okay. That's the impact it can have. That's how much it can move people, as Anne was saying, is that when we bring us to the table, it really does. It gives people permission.
Yeah. Yeah, I love a lot of things you've said there, Anna. I want to take a really short break and just acknowledge people who are typing in the side there, because there's some great questions, some great comments that I'll jump to in ever a moment. I just want to finish this thought with you there, because what I notice, and first of all, kudos for bearing your soul, so to speak, on social media. And because it is a wonderful way of engaging, whether we're in public, on social media, on a video, however it is. However, I'd like to talk about what I consider a really fine line between being vulnerable and being a whingy bitch that I sort of see online, where people are looking for, they're being vulnerable, and I get the sense they're looking for sympathy, or they're looking for a hug, or they're looking to have a whinge. Which for me is a very, very different thing. And I hope no one takes it that that's what I was implying of you whatsoever. But for me, there's a really, really fine line between, okay, I'm just going to have a whinge so the whole world can feel sorry for me, and then being able to open up and bare your soul and bare your weaknesses, or what, however we want to describe the fact that, you know, you're obviously very attached to yourself. So I'd love to know if you think there's any, and it's only something I've thought of as we were talking, I'd love to know if you think there's any way that people can show that vulnerability, because we're talking public speaking here, that's what we do, to be able to understand, I suppose, when they're being vulnerable and when they're going for the sympathy vote, I suppose. Yeah.
Now, I love what Sci-Fi Funk's just thrown in over on the comments there. He said, true, but you know when you are whinging, so it can be controlled. And I think that's bang on. I know when I'm about to post something and the nerves, like, you know, when you're about to share something that's a little bit raw, whether you're coming from a place of whingy bitch or bearing your soul, there's always going to be that. It's like, you know, you're standing on the edge and it's like, okay, and you jump. And you know when you're on that edge, you know whether you're doing this from a place of true intent, or you're doing it because you want to get back at an ex-boyfriend, or, you know, it's a passive-aggressive pass at your workmate or something. Like, you know in yourself. And I think that's, you know, it's about having a level of integrity in what you're sharing with the world, and a level of truth honesty behind it. Be honest with yourself. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to serve the community, or are you doing this to serve your own self-centered bullshit, to put it quite bluntly?
No, I love where you came from. Where I was thinking was basically the same, that, you know, what Ian was talking about earlier. Are you sharing this to serve yourself, or are you sharing this to serve your audience? You know, and once again, when if I share this, it's taking the audience to ABC towards the point that we're trying to get to. Or am I serving it because, I want the world to know how hard I've had to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think really when we're attached to ourselves, or when we're honest with ourselves, you're right. You know, self-editing, as I think it says Phil V there has said, we know deep down, and you know when there's you know, that moment in your head where you're thinking, I'm just really, and don't get me wrong, having a whinge is great. Don't do it as a public speaker. At those particular moments, you do it with your friends at the pub or wherever else you choose.
Yeah, take it offline.
Yeah, please take it offline. That would save us all a lot of time.
And I think something else I thought of when you said, you know, that line between whinginess and being true. I think often the whinginess can come through, like, well, when you're coming from a true place, it also has full transparency.
Yeah.
The whinge also has like a bit of a fog around it, like that make people go, huh? What is she referring? Was that? Hang on a minute. So, and you know, especially in, you know, when you're writing something on social media, that, you know, it's all about that. If you're being fully transparent and you're throwing it all on the table, then you know it's coming from a place of service.
Yeah, and I like the fact that really, I suppose, you and I are both life coaches as well, so understand, and for the people who are on here who might be into personal development or things along those lines, mindfulness, that it is about taking responsibility for yourself. You know, and even in some of the stories that I hear told by excellent speakers, the story might be how all this stuff was just going wrong for whatever reason. However, the story is driving towards, this is how I overcame it, or this is how I changed my mindset, or whatever that is serving what they're getting across to the room. So when it's a personal development seminar and things, then, that's exactly what you need the audience to be learning in the early stages of personal development. So utilising those stories, once again, as we keep coming back to, with the end point in mind rather than the self point there. Yeah. Sci-Fi Funk has posted this question twice, so we'll come to it. He's like to hear of any experiences where you left them wanting more, and any secrets to share. So, Anna, have you got one off the top of your head that you'd like to share, or a moment or a secret?
This is so random. I think this is probably one of the most random things I've ever spoken about. But I think it really does connect to everything that we've been talking about tonight. And when the audience was left wanting more, and the reason I knew that they were left wanting more was because they were coming up to me afterwards and they were wanting to share. And it was what we spoke about with Ian before. They wanted to share with me their experiences. And the talk I was doing was actually about rescue dogs. I was talking about my rescue dog Bruno, and I was sharing, how to approach rescue dogs and any dog in general. And so I was talking about mine and Bruno's journey. He's a 30-odd kilo bulldog and full of slobber, and so much love, and looks a little bit scary with his big gnarly teeth that get hooked. He gets a snaggle tooth from time to time. It's just the cutest thing ever. But he's terrified of people and animals. And I shared our life and some really great information about, how to approach dogs, how to approach dog owners, what it means to be a rescue dog owner, how to go through that minefield of that. Because I came from that space, I came from a space of vulnerability. I shared something I knew. It was something that I was passionate about. I took the audience on a journey. The end outcome was that I wanted them to walk away with more knowledge and be able to go out into the world being more confident in approaching dogs that they don't know. And gnarly? Okay.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is good. And so I went through everything that we've talked about so far tonight. And at the end of my talk, people were coming up and they're like, "This is my dog. Like, you've made me want to get a dog again." And, can we meet Bruno? Like, could we come and meet Bruno? If I follow all the rules, do you think I could maybe pat him? And people were they bought into our life. And I think, that they really wanted more. They wanted to know more. And it was, will you share more pictures of Bruno on Instagram? Yeah, I can share more pictures of Bruno on Instagram. So it was that they actually wanted not just more of the topic, but they wanted more of me. Such a random topic to be talking about, but I think that really answers Sci-Fi Funk's question, was that, have I had that? Yeah. And it can be on the most mundane things, but it's all about taking them on the journey, keeping them connected, keeping them engaged and excited, and doing all the stuff that we've been talking about so far. I think absolutely anybody can get that result.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Anna. It's amazing that when you hear those sort of stories, and I wouldn't call your dog mundane by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's one. He's normally in the back of the shot. I'm disappointed that he's not on a bookshelf there somewhere. And,
I'm sure there'll be a photo, but like we don't started, because it would just be like, and then this one, and then this one, and then
you're gonna have to start a dog blab for that. It's funny with everything when people ask questions around this sort of stuff in public speaking, almost everything that it comes back to when you boil it right down is that connection and creating that connection, which leads to engagement, which leads to the questions, which leads to. So really everything that you want to do within your public speaking is create a connection with every individual or as many individuals in that audience as you can. And the more connection you try through things that we've said, through, varying the levels, the not the passion, but the energy levels, varying your tone, having stories, making sure that, things are fitting in that 7 to 10 minute interest gap, and understanding who your audience are and what they're looking for from you, all starts to lead towards that, that wanting more. The other thing that I'll add, which I suppose is a little more tangible, is make sure you've got that, if they're wanting more, there has to be more. If you've told them everything that you know and not laid everything on the table, because that's a bit of passion and energy, but if you've told them everything you know, it's hard to leave them wanting more, because there isn't any. And somehow the audience gets a sense of that as well. So it is a case of really allowing yourself to take that step back in your presentations. And one of the keys that I look at with a lot of people is being able to slow down, which is the biggest tip I can give people. And it'll sound funny to how do you leave people wanting more? Well, you slow down. For me, I could be an auctioneer. If I was talking normal, this is the speed I like to talk at, and I like to talk this speed, and that's the speed that makes sense to me when I'm going. But I know that in this arena, I know that when I'm presenting in face-to-face arenas, I have to work really hard at slowing down my speech, because if I speak at my normal pace, people can't compute. They hear it, but they can't compute it at the same time. So I have to make sure that I slow my speech down, and to me it sounds ridiculously slow, but I know it doesn't to the audience. And the other thing that, coming off along that too, is allowing people to absorb your message. So don't be afraid to pause.
Yeah.
Allow that. So many speakers, once again, are looking to fill every gap and thinking, but you need to give your audience, what you're talking about. Your audience is learning. So you need to give them time to rearrange the blocks that they've got into this new order. As a presenter, we're often already there. As teachers, you're often already there. You need to allow the audience time to also have that process as well. So thank you so much. Ian, we seem to still be flashing there. I'm not sure if I don't think we can hear you. If we and people who are new to Blab will understand what flashing is a good term on Blab, not a naked term.
No.
But we'd love to see if we can get you out as we start to wind up here. So, Anna, I'd like to throw across to you the topic around today was how to keep your audience excited and engaged. And I think we've worked through so many of the different topics. Is there anything that we haven't covered? Any little specific tips that you think we could pass on to these guys, or anything that has stood out for you as a key learning during our I think hour together?
Yeah, I'd actually like to tie it in with the question that Sci-Fi Funk's throwing out over there around how do you relax and be yourself? And I think my response to your question, Fraser, will answer Sci-Fi Funk's question as well here, and that's whenever you go into a room, whether that's online, whether that, when online as well, any posts that you're sharing on social media, the videos that you're making, the Blab rooms that you're in, the stages that you're on, the networking conversations that you're having, whenever you're in front of anyone, go into that conversation from that place of service. And that's how I relax. I start most of my days, prior to every Blab chat, whenever I go into any space, and I just say a very simple and very quiet prayer, and it is, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And what would you have me say? And to whom? And that just puts me in that space of I'm being guided and I'm here to serve. And it's not about me anymore. And I think when we come from that space, when we come from a space of service, that is when the magic happens. That's when people connect with us, and that's when they want more of us and they're excited by what we're sharing. Yeah,
love it, Anna, and Sci-Fi Funk. Hopefully you picked up a whole heap of gold out of that. That when you're nervous and when you're terrified of public speaking, you're making it about you. You're not making it about your audience. And I'm not saying that by making it about your audience, all of that will wash away the instant you step on stage. I still get nervous when I walk on stage, but it's what I call controllable nerves or excitement. I'm not, I'm not to the point where I can't get on stage at all. So it's about harnessing, and we spoke a little bit about this last week, harnessing and using that. Ian, sorry, mate, I thought I'd lost you. I don't know. Everybody else might have still had you on my screen. You were pulsating, but I would love to throw back to you Now that you're
I don't
definitely
know if pulsating is any better than flushing.
Still pulsating, really, isn't he? I'd love to throw back to you as we wind up here too, mate, for any little tips you've got at the end, or anything you'd like to highlight that we spoke about today for the viewers.
Cool. About half an hour ago, I was saying, just back to Steve Sci-Fi Funk's question before. One of the things that I notice, it even goes back to that beer chat or coffee chat, given the time of day, it's beer or wine for us. The thing that people do over the beer is they want to tell the whole story. I don't know about you, but there's a part of the story about 3/4 of the way through where it served its purpose. Now, the story is about the fact that you've got dog poo on your shoe. It's not necessarily about, and I got new shoes at the end of it. It's actually not the interesting bit. The interesting bit is when that poo occurred, and in that moment, something happened. And I think one of the things that Steve could consider, and we all could consider, is that, and in speaking, we talk about open and closed loops. Often when you're telling a story, you get to a point where the intervention or the insight is really valuable. After that, it's not valuable to the presentation that you're giving, but it could be valuable to the follow-up afterwards. And that could be the story, like the dog. You know, what happened to the dog? Did you stuff it and put it on your shelf? Sorry, my boy's been talking about stuffing our dog and keeping him forever, so that just springs to mind. But even in your content, if you tell everything about your content, there's not much to hang around for. But one of the things that I do in my speaking career are mastermind groups. And what's really useful is over a 3-hour period of a mastermind group, I can lay down enough information, but get to the end, that they want to hang around for a drink or 2 or 3 or 4 afterwards to get the backstory, to get the next juice that I want them to come back for the next session for. But there's more there. So you just tell them what they need to make the shift. You don't tell them the fact that you got new shoes at the end. It's not so powerful. Stick to what they need to know and take the rest out, throw it away. If they're interested and you've engaged them, they'll come up and ask anyway. And I think that's, not necessarily, don't tell everything. I'm not saying keep your products in your back pocket so they don't know about it. It's just more give them the information that serves. Don't give them all the stuff that removes their need to stay engaged. And I think that's a real art. I think that's where the game of speaking as a business lies. And I think it's something that we forget in the beer conversation. People only want to know up to the point where excitement happens. The end of the story, I don't know, I want the next drink by that stage. But overall, just to round off the discussion, I've really appreciated being part of the threesome that we have, at least for the time I thought I was in the room. And I really appreciate the questions that everyone's been asking in the chat box. I think it's a great platform for those sorts of conversations. And maybe next time we can get a few more people in the room. Well done, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ian, and Sci-Fi Funk there just said, it ties in so closely with good writing. It is, it is literally what an author would do in front of a crowd, I suppose. Probably a bad analogy because some authors wouldn't like to be in front of a crowd, but it is about crafting a message, and it is about, I often use the word manipulating a room, and I know that word has negative connotations. But, we spoke right at the start about managing the audience's energy. We are in charge of managing and manipulating this audience so that they get to where they paid to get to if we're paid presenters. And I know we've got people in the room who are contemplating doing their first talk. I know we've got presenters in the room who are already working and paying bills through public speaking. So we've got such a wonderful community on here, which is fantastic. I'd like to thank Ian and Anna for joining me this evening. I'd like to thank Ian especially for starting a new Blab when the old Blab wouldn't work so we could get online at all. Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about when your Blab comes up?
Yeah, so Thursday nights, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, as Fraser taught me, not Melbourne time. It's not the professional way to put it. But Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. is where you can find me at the Happy Hotline. Happy Hour is what they're called. If you jump on the Facebook page, look up the Happy Hotline, you'll find me. I always share the links in there so you can find it that way. And this week we are talking about discovering your calling and how to jump in headfirst into following that calling. So it'll be a nice, juicy conversation. You know, some reason I just had with flashing and because of those words you used earlier, Fraser, but they don't fit there. But you know, it'll be a great chat. So yeah, come along, join the conversation. It's always a lot of fun. So.
Thanks so much, Anna. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board tonight. And same as always, you've got something coming up that people, or where's the best place for people to find you?
I do. Obviously, the best place is Blab, isn't it?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
right? They know us and they pop in and they check us out. Now, Blab's the place to be.
Yeah.
By all means, kick with me on Twitter. And I've got a Blab running, wait for it, at 6 a.m. Australian Daylight Time on Saturday.
Melbourne time.
Melbourne time. On Saturday morning, bright and early. It's a fantastic time for the UK and it's a useful time for the US. And it's Interrobang Improv. And what we do there...
say that again.
Interrobang Improv.
Okay,
what
does that mean? Yeah, what is this? We so didn't have the script earlier.
Have you ever heard of an elevator where you tell them something and they're reeled in so you can have the next part of the conversation?
Yeah.
And interrobang is where you have exclamation mark overlaid, like that.
Ah, okay, yeah.
And the point of it is I get to ask questions and victims get to answer. We go, wow. So it's about, you know how we blab on Blab and we talk forever and we can go for like days?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Interrobang Improv is all about, you've got 1 to 2 minutes to answer a question as succinctly and as specifically and with a story, whatever it takes to move an audience. The audience gives you feedback on how you did. They give you a score between 0 and 10. They give you feedback on how you did it. And it's all about get to the point, take an audience on a journey. And it's a game show called Interrobang Improv, and it's all about getting to the point, making it count, and bringing an audience on the journey. So 6 a.m. right now in Melbourne time, and I'm just about to launch another time through the week to really get a more comfortable, it's a great pub game. So I want to get evenings in the US working as well. So
yeah, cool.
There'll be 2 a week at least, and it's really public speaking training. It's getting people to think succinctly, get to the point, and move an audience.
Fantastic, Ian, and they can find you through @Dynamic Speaking, which will be wonderful. I'll be in the States on Saturday morning, so I will try and see if I can blab onto that Friday night US time. It'll be fantastic, heading over there for some work. My name's Fraser from the Public Speaking Institute. We do have some workshops coming up, which I've just popped on the feed. In Melbourne at the moment, we have other cities coming up earlier in the year. Perfect your pitch and really work on how you're presenting your business. We'd love to see as many of you along as possible. And I know that most of us are also members of the Public Speaking Tips page on Facebook, where there's more of this, but less presentation, I suppose. A lot more questions and feedback and things. So if you're looking to get into public speaking, if you're looking to improve your public speaking, if you're looking to get paid for public speaking, come and join the group, and we do ban around a lot of things that are going to help you take all of those steps. So once again, Ian, Anna, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you both along. We will be back at the same time next week, so 8 o'clock on a Tuesday in Melbourne time, and also Sydney time, and the rest of you will have to go and look up when it's at. Been a pleasure, guys. Have a great night. Thanks so much.
Bye.